All right. So once again, thank you for joining me this morning. I'm going to talk about the kind of the connections that can be made to Workamajig and potentially to an outside source, or brings things in from the outside source into Workamajig. Okay. So we're going to kind of touch on several locations. I wanted to start out with the admin manager area because this is more the global settings that we can set up. Okay, and so I'm just going to go to, again, menu, admin manager. This gives me system setup. And so one of the places we have is connections, right? Seems kind of brain dead for that one. Okay, so one of the things we can do is set up emails. Okay, so the email basically is incoming. So this allows you to send an email out from the system. They can hit reply. That email comes back into the mailbox that you set up. And then of course it then processes it and threads it into either the contact record or the project, depending on where it came out of. Okay. So with each email that is sent from Workamajig, there's a little bit of code in it that allows us to pick that up and thread it properly. So again, that your client should just have to hit reply. And as long as this is set up, then it'll go in and we'll process it and thread it properly. Okay. So there's a couple of places we can use. Again, it's usually Outlook or Gmail are the most commons, but of course you can use your own server. As far as, all right, let me get rid of that. Okay. So as far as Outlook, we have a new system where we're using the OAuth, right, for the POP access, either POP or IMAP. And again, you just select that, walk through the process of logging into Workamajig or logging into Outlook or the Outlook box that you've set up, and then we'll make that connection. Okay. For Google, because they've gone to two-factor as well, they will more likely, you'll be using an app password for this. And again, usually your G Suite admin will be able to provide an app password for that particular mailbox that you set up. You shouldn't have that. Sorry about that. I was doing some testing, didn't realize that. Okay, so there we go. So the other thing that we may want to do on this side is also down below is set up SMTP. So why would we set up SMTP? Well, of course, if you're on one of our app servers, app 2, 3, 4, 5, up through 20 or more, okay, that mail comes from maile or mailw.workamajig.com. So of course, that's not your domain. So of course, that's usually caught as spam. So we can set up a connection to your mail server. So basically we're logging in and passing the email to your server, and then it comes out from your domain. Okay, pretty straightforward. Again, if you're using Outlook or, sorry, 365, or you're using G Suite, again, that tends to need an app password now to use in this location. I know that 365 has also gone to SMTP OAuth. We have not implemented that. So again, we still use the app password, okay? And that is, again, usually your admins would be able to create those fields, okay? Any questions on that? There we have. Okay, so the next one that's still in the connections area, I'm going to tend to, again, you guys may already know this, but we also have under credit cards, we have a Plaid connection. So that in most cases, I can come into here and set up a new Plaid connection. And basically it's saying, okay, give me my bank. And then this will take you to your bank to log in. And then we'll basically start to download your credit card transactions into our connector screen. Okay, there is some setup on this, but again, this is a quick way for you to get those transactions into Workamajig and process them properly, mapping them to different projects and items and things along that line. So again, it becomes more of a vendor invoice at that point in time, so that you can bill the client back for those charges. Okay. Again, we have in our support guide, of course, we have how to set that up. Most banks are contained in this. If it's not in here, again, we can always use an OFX file or a CSV file for your credit card statement, and then import that into the connector screen if that's the way you'd like to go. Okay. But there's an awful lot of institutions in here. If it's not, you can always talk to your bank to see if they can add it to it. And we can always, again, send a note into Plaid to say, hey, can you try and add this bank? But it's usually from your side kind of saying, please, can you start using it or something? It's kind of the bank choice. Okay. The other thing that may control access to Workamajig, again, it's still a connection, is we also have single sign-on available. So again, if you have a single sign-on server, and we just need to do a little bit of setup on our side to define where is it going to go. So oftentimes it'll be your company name.workamajig.com. We just need your company name here. And then again, that would be, we're going to point this to your server. So again, we can get the credentials. So what that does is it just allows us to, again, compare it to your Active Directory. What do I do with this? Is, do I let them in or not based upon, are they a user in your system? There's also, if you're in more of an internal organization, you can always click on auto create clients and vendors. So what this does is when they log in, it basically will say, okay, who are you? And if it's not in Workamajig, we can actually create a client record, and it's just going to be a contact record. You would map what company does it go to, but once they're in the system, then you can basically change them to a different location, put them into the true location. So maybe, like I said, an internal organization, it's department 1 versus department 2. You may put them into this nebulous, new contact, but then once they're in the system, we can move them to department 1 or department 2, depending on where you want them. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, another connection we have is our API. Okay. So under the API, we have a pretty full one. It's just a REST API. Most fields in the system are available to it. And this is a way of basically pushing data or pulling data out of Workamajig. So there is some setup to this, but again, if you're trying to pull out information for, for finance or things like that, that may be it. I know some people are using this for Tableau, so they're pulling out that file, so basically a JSON file, so they can feed it into their Tableau settings, and then you can do the charting for it. Another way is also some are using it to push information from maybe, like what would I say, SurveyMonkey or something like that, some other program that I can get a file that I can go ahead and push that across. Okay. Now, as far as the APIs, again, we won't do that programming to make that connection. If there's a problem with, hey, I'm sending it this field and it doesn't seem to be updating the way I want, that's what we will look at. But we're not going to decode all of your code, right, to try and find out what the actual problem is, if that makes sense. Okay. But again, this would be available to, again, your team to either pull or push data into Workamajig. Okay. And that's what goes along with that would also be when we come into reports. And so I'm just going to kind of quickly jump to the report center or any view. When I go to these, almost all of them, if I have an edit, each of these would have an API key that's associated with them. So again, it's kind of like saying, well, I just want to pull these fields. And so this is another way of just, I want these fields. And so it's kind of a predefined thing. I can just say, hit this key, pull these fields out. Okay. The date ranges and things like that, I can also feed as filters, but that might be, again, a way of getting that done. Okay. While we're on reports, again, do I need the API or not to get data out? Most of the time that's for graphing. But remember, for each of these, we also have the ability to schedule them, if that makes sense. So the idea of this is once I run it, I'm going to be able to actually schedule the report, meaning I can send it out to people as a PDF or a CSV file, each week, each day, whatever it is, just based upon the filters that you set up. And we've done a number of webinars regarding this. Again, to me, that seems like a little bit of a connection, right? How to feed stuff out. Okay. All right. So this is kind of the main connectors, right, that we're doing, okay, out. The other thing that we would look towards is, sorry, and I don't have this one, is file storage, okay? Now, I don't have any file storage because I'm on Workamajig files, but if you have a Windows server or an Amazon server, some people have Box, those kind of three, again, we can have a connection to those where we would basically be dropping files onto your server. And then again, just a way of file storage, okay, for their projects and other attachments. All right. All right. The next thing I'd look at is more the calendar connections and how we can kind of utilize those. All right. So within work, or I guess I can stop there. Is there any questions regarding those? I know I was kind of basic on those. There's still guides for that. Again, for all of those setup items, if you have questions, send to support@workamajig.com. We'd be happy to answer them for you or get you in contact with the person that can help you further. Okay. Quiet group. Okay. So the next one I'd be looking at would be the calendar. I think that's the most common one we have. So as I set up calendar, how can I make connections? So the number one thing we can do is, let me go ahead and just say yes to that. Get to the calendar again. Okay, there we go. Okay, so on the calendar, so we have a number of connections that we can have. So we're just going to go to the display options. And so as my calendar here, I can actually subscribe to external calendars. Okay. So for example, I have this external calendar here. And again, I have, it's my Dave Arnold calendar. And this is a Google one. Outlook works much the same, just a little different setting. Unfortunately, I don't have a full-blown Office 365, so it works a little different when you have an admin in place. So I'm just going to do the Google one. But again, it works the same way. I just come into, my name or my calendar that I want to bring into Workamajig, settings and sharing. And within Google, there's going to be a secret code, right? This is the one we need. And so I just basically copy this out. Okay. Right. Then I can go into Workamajig and I say, I want a new calendar. Okay. And so I create a new calendar and I'm just going to call this one Google. That's what I would recommend. And it says subscribe to a calendar from URL. And I'm going to go ahead and put that key code in. Okay. And then I'm going to say, well, what do you want to do with the meetings? Okay. So I have this choice of saying, hey, if it's blocked out, or don't block out anything, only block out meetings that are busy. So this is feeding into my traffic. And that's the way I'm setting this up. And then this is if you're using 365, it's, out of office, they have that, or anything that comes across is going to be blocked out. So most typical would be only block out if meetings are busy. If you happen to be doing this with a 365, then probably use the Outlook 365 one. Okay. Right. So I'm going to select that. Again, my subscription, I want to make sure that the time zone is correct. It's usually defaults to my own, but again, you might subscribe to a calendar that has a different time zone for it. Another thing we have is it says parse description for projects and tasks. So there's a way for us to go in and basically you can see if I put a project number or project number pipe task ID within single square brackets, then we can actually read that and can help you to put in your time entries on that. And I'll show you that in just a second. Okay. The security is the same, who can see it, but again, I'm really not too worried about that because this is really my calendar and it's going to just be used to feed my business from my Google Calendar into Workamajig so traffic can see it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And once I do that, you can see that those meetings on the 28th, right? And let me go back to here, all came across. Okay. Now I did set up one of these where I knew what the project was, and I think this was it. Maybe it's this one. Okay. So within this new project meeting, I actually put in my project number okay, pipe, and the task ID I wanted to track this particular meeting towards. I think you may have seen this before. So this is what was in Google. That's what I put in. So when that actually comes into Workamajig, okay, so here's those meetings right here. And when I click onto that meeting, it shows up. Because it was already coded to a project, it's going to allow me to then put in that time here. If I had a default service set up, then that service would have defaulted in. But in this case, I don't have a default service set up. So I'm going to have to select it before I save it. Okay. Right. And then I can do the same thing because it's tied to a task. I can actually say I'm done with it and put in other information if I need to. Okay. And I'll just go ahead. I'm not going to save that particular time entry. Okay. But the nice thing is also when I go to my today page, I'm going to see that kickoff meeting, right? And so I can actually just click into it. It's already pre-filled in for me. And I just hit save. And there's my time entry for that. Right? It's already coded out. Sorry, I probably needed to get the service in there so it would completely save. But again, there we go. So it's actually all I have to do is click onto that meeting, click save, and it goes. So again, that's the subscription model that'll bring things across. Okay. Now we can also go the other way. All right. So in this case, what I can do is go into what in Workamajig, again, if I want things to go out of Workamajig. So I come into everyone and hit the calendar again, and again, display options. And this is where I can actually say, okay, on each calendar, there's going to be basically a share link. Okay. And so I can go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and share this one, copy out the URL. I don't know if I have anything on this one though. So maybe I can do perhaps a conference room or something like that. Here, let me actually do a different one. And I'll kind of come back to the sharing bit. Why I want to show you is actually there's another place that we can kind of share calendars. Okay. So for the external. So if I come to Resource Manager, kind of shifting gears a little bit, we have a traffic calendar. Okay. So we often hear, hey, how do I send my client a calendar? Right? They want to see where things are at, whatnot. Okay. We have a traffic calendar, and within the traffic calendar, we can actually publish a calendar. So again, based upon the settings, what do I want as filters? And I think you guys are all aware of this. I can actually kind of predefine these, and that's what one I call Bubba. Okay. So this is for a client that's called Bubba Shrimp. Okay. And I'm going to create a calendar that's basically showing everything in progress this month. Okay. There's some other filters that are on there. I'm going to go ahead and search that. And once I've searched it, again, that gives me the results. When I go into the calendar, it's going to show me kind of those same results. If that makes sense. Okay. So that then the nice thing about this is actually a calendar that I can send out to my client to subscribe to. So if I come in here and I say, okay, copy this URL, okay, and I'm going to pull here, okay, here's my Google Calendar. I'm going to say, I need a new calendar, right? And from URL, and I go ahead and paste that link in here and add the calendar. It's going to take a little bit, and then you can see that it comes right in. I go back to my calendar and expose it. And I don't know why this keeps jumping to February, but there are the same results that I just saw. Okay. Okay. So this is what you can give to your client. You're saying, well, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Let me kind of remove this back and come back into Workamajig again. Okay. And go ahead and search on this. And the nice thing is again, I'm going to go ahead and kick on this task here. And let's say, for example, I'm just going to start this instead of on the 28th, I'm going to start it on the 30th, right? Duration is still the same. I save that. I can see that kind of move things down on the Gantt chart. That makes sense. If I look at the day, that might be the project one. It's like, oh, I know what it is. Okay. So as I add things in, That makes sense. If I add or change things in the project. So I'm just going to, sorry, change the start date to a different date. Let's say it's the 31st. Okay. And that's going to obviously change those settings, that these settings would then update within that calendar. So again, as it refreshes again, this calendar would then pick up those changes within here. Okay. So the idea is that when I make the change, right, again, we can just set up a calendar in Workamajig to say, hey, anytime I add a project for Bubba, it falls within this date range, right? Or this kind of concept, due within this day, it's going to automatically update their calendar that they've subscribed to. So again, I don't have to keep sending them reports for that. We can just have them subscribe to it. Okay. Okay. So, So does that make sense for, again, how I can get the information out of Workamajig, kind of using a subscription, or I can, again, push meetings into Workamajig from an outside source. Okay. Okay. I do have a question that says, are there calendar settings specific to users, or can the admin change these? For the subscriptions, that's the individual doing this. So they would have to set it up for themselves, which makes sense because, again, if there happens, the subscription, not so much, but again, there might be some other things. I don't want that one coming in anymore, so I can delete it. These calendars are read only, right? So they're just coming across. So if I delete them, it's not doing anything per se. It's just simply removing that calendar. And so those meetings would be removed. Okay. The nice thing about when they're set up is that when I come into the staff schedule for that person, so staff schedule, we're going to see those meetings in there as well. Okay. I might have blocked this. All right, forget the filters. Let's see. Now we have a meeting one. There we go. So we can say exclude project meeting. So that one meeting that was in there, that would have been removed, if that makes sense, just based upon that. Okay. Because I had that project number sitting in there. Okay. Showing up. All right. And this may be a pretty quick one, right? So anyway, we just want to make you aware of, there are many ways of connecting. I think the calendar is the most connected that we have, right? Now, there are other software programs. We just started kind of a Slack channel integration, and we have done a webinar on that, so I won't go into that. But again, if you have questions regarding those, just feel free to reach out. Again, we have Slack channels. We have integration with a couple of media locations. So we have Strata and Media Ocean, Gale Force, which is Media Force as well. So those three media buying platforms were able to bring across data. The way they integrate is slightly different. One Strata, we have a tool that will make the connection. For Media Force or Gale Force, they actually use the media plan to they use our API to basically push information into Workamajig, and that's using the media plan. Media Ocean, Media Ocean uses more of an import file. So we would get the vendor invoices and we can import those in. Okay. And again, each of those have their own kind of methodologies and things. So again, if you have questions or thinking integrating with those software programs, feel free. Okay. Now there is also an integration with Zapier, which is, again, an API basically integration. Right now, that Zapier connection is more for moving things around the CRM module. So again, bringing in a contact record from like HubSpot, right? You grab that and push it into Workamajig to track. Okay. We have another thing called Web to Lead, That's basically a form HTML page. So like your contact page, contact us page, they could fill out a form, post it, and that posting within Workamajig would allow you to create an activity, create a lead record, and some other things, right? And basically, again, then they're in the system, they're captured so you can follow up with them. Again, that's more for use for your internal marketing, not for the client marketing. Okay. Because I don't think your client, you don't need your clients, your clients' clients in our system because there's not really anything that we can do. Okay. All right. Um, that really, I know it's a short version here, but again, we just wanted you to be aware of all these different connections within Workamajig. And if you're trying to get things from the outside in, if you have any questions, send those into support@workamajig.com. But right now, again, if you have any questions or there's an area that maybe I didn't cover. Okay. And again, you guys can use the chat or the question answer location. All right. All right. Well, again, not getting any feedback. So again, I'll turn over, now you can gain 30 more minutes out of your day. Again, if you have any further questions, contact support@workamajig.com. We'd be happy to help you out. Thanks again for your time and have a great rest of the day.